Power, Beauty, Soul. Welcome to this design analysis video of the DB9 and DB11 Aston Martins. The DB9 was first shown to the public at the 2003 Frankfurt Motor Show. It followed the DB7 and links design-wise to both that car and a much more modern and more defined Vanquish. The first generation DB9 is seen by many car designers worldwide as a very strong piece of car design. In order to fully understand this, it is important to look at the car in detail and, in particular, to analyze the predecessor of the DB9, the Vanquish, designed by Ian Callum. That Vanquish is actually a bit inconsistent compared to the DB, whilst the DB9 is the embodiment of automotive design perfection. Various places on the Vanquish nose, for example under the headlights, from the grille to the fenders, the skin is forced around the corner, and in other places it's too hard and squeezing or pinching in car design language. Around the door, that skin is heavy and a bit clumsy. The skin around the hip is rather undefined, and the bulge on the door is more an expression of obesity rather than muscle strength. In other places the surfacing looks thin. For example, the concave sills seems to almost be formed from paper rather than embodying volume and strength. And the front spoiler feels also terribly thin and fragile. Then the DB9. True sculptural perfection. First of all, the fantastic, elongated proportions are very important to mention. A good car design starts with good proportions. The Vanquish is a bit rough, and the DB9 ratios are not only unique and distinctive, but can also be beautifully linked to the Aston Martin heritage. Because typical of the Aston Martins from the 1960s, for instance, is that those cars do not look brutal. They don't look rough or raw. They are elegant and graceful. The true gentleman express. And it is precisely this that the DB9 achieves so well. In a world full of sports cars on steroids with anger management issues, this car is a truly well-trained gentleman, looking sleek in his tailored London Savile Row suit, with a consistency of skin that appears to have grown rather than put together. The British have a wonderful word for it: effortlessness. This car is also very well three-dimensionally designed. For example, the shapes go through the wheels, if you like, so from front to the rear. This subtle but sufficiently present thickening at the bottom of the front bumper, which makes a beautiful light catcher flowing onto the doors towards the side of the car, is a striking example of this. It makes the car have a fantastic stance. It sits very nicely on its feet. The grille is perfectly recessed into the nose, and it is the starting point for a subtle, upright facette that runs along the bonnet, adding visual volume to this upright facette. It is then defining the shoulder at the bottom of the line towards the back, whilst the top of it goes into the A-pillar. Beautifully executed. The headlights are perfectly positioned on the front fender, exactly where they should be. On top of that, they are non-aggressively shaped too. They aren't angry, but look into this world openly and friendly. And all the shapes that are seen emphasize the length and elegance of this sculpture. The hip grows beautifully, it increases in volume towards the rear, where the tail lights, completely in red, close the entire end, simply and visually light because of the body-colored insert. The cabin rests on the hips in a beautifully defined, round shape running from fender to fender over the boot lid. The design of the rear is also clean and consistent. The visual weight of the body-colored elements in the C-shaped taillights has the same tension as both the license plate holder and the highlight on the bumper under the taillights. The designers at Aston Martin truly did a magnificent job with DB9. This car is the definition of automotive perfection. Then up to DB11. Imagine, especially after this hymn about the DB9, the important and difficult task assigned to the designers of Aston Martin. Come up with the successor of this DB9. It is both a huge honor and a potentially terrible doom scenario at the same time. How can the perfect Aston Martin ever be improved? Well, it cannot. That is the only correct answer. Chief Creative Officer Marek Reichman and his design team must have realized this. When the DB9 followed the DB7 and the Vanquish, the DBS and the Virage were built, that specific, almost legendary Aston Martin shape was just finalized. It was therefore time for something new. It was also essential to stay far away from imminent design burdens, because this is what a fixed pattern that must be complied with presents to designers. So, white sheet of paper. The designers had to question what makes an Aston an Aston. That starts with the right proportions. The visual lightness, so to speak, has definitely remained in DB11. In fact, the car seems even lighter compared to the DB9 from certain angles. The well-known design elements have evolved. The radiator grille is more clearly defined in the 11 than it was in the 9, with more pronounced shapes in the body, made possible by new production technology. Clearly defined and sharper lines are running across the body of DB11. The headlights are more focused, expressive and perhaps a bit too angry. The flank is slender due to the sculpted surfacing, making this sports car look stretched and graceful. The rear is just as refined and stylish, with a new interpretation of the C-shaped taillights that the DB9 introduced so beautifully. Extremely slim thanks to LED technology. The question naturally arises whether this car is better than the DB9. That, much like the design task, is an impossible question to answer. What can be said with certainty is that the DB11 is beautifully slim, but unfortunately also somewhat messy. Precisely because the car is so pure, the extra frames and rubbers, for instance, that are caused by the floating roofline stand out. Also, the line running from the front wheel backwards is creating a new graphic for the so typical fender fans seen on all Aston Martins. Depending on the angle, it does look a bit pointed upwards, right above the wheel. Also, a similar line previously was a unique and defining feature of the Bentley Continental GT, a car we discussed in a previous video. But in their car it was dropped in the third generation. It is not necessarily the best idea to implement a piece of sculpture that could be so easily defined as being an element of a brand DNA from the competitor. However, fortunately all of the issues mentioned are easy to resolve. The DB11 is a very suitable basis for a car design for coach building activities. A craft, moreover, that links beautifully with the heritage of Aston Martin and the DB models.